It wasn't the game that we all hoped for, that we all were hyping up for a couple of weeks, but we got to the end of the Super Bowl. Tom Brady won ring number 7. And now on episode 37 of the Glass of Joe podcast, we will talk about it. Joe Malfa here alongside PJ Glasser as always. And we will wrap up the NFL season and start looking ahead to the next NFL season with today's guest, NFL punt returner, kick returner, one of the all-time greats of the Washington football team, Brian Mitchell. Pleased to be joined this week by NFL great, current analyst for NBC Sports Washington, and now the co-host of BMitch and Philly on 106.7 The Fan. First of all, congrats on that, Brian Mitchell. We really appreciate you coming on the pod. How's everything going?
Oh, no problem, man. Everything's going well. I'm sorry I'm a little late.
That's all good.
All
good. Time doesn't exist in the world of COVID, man.
Off the bat.
There you go. Time is a totally different concept now ever since COVID started. Like, if you're late, maybe you're early, maybe you're late. It doesn't matter. It's all relative at this point. Yeah. But we'll jump right in. We won't keep you too long. Football season just ended. You got a ring yourself. What does it feel like to wake up on Monday morning, the night after that Super Bowl, knowing that you just did what you guys just did?
You have a headache. You're probably suffering from a hangover, but ultimately what it is like, I think in anything that you do and you want to be the best at it. And I think it's the ultimate team sport. You're looking at football where you have, back then it was 40-something guys dressing out. You had a total of about 53 guys on the team per se. Now they have like up to 60-something people. But ultimately you go through a season, you work out. The other teammates are working out. You have to worry about, injuries. They had to worry about COVID at this time, making sure guys are going to be prepared to play. And then you finally get to that final game and you win it. For me, it was like something I've always dreamed of. And when I finally woke up, it's something they can't take away from you. I still put on that ring and I smile. I look at it like, yes, this is something that I set out to do, set out wanting to be. But it wasn't just all about me. I had to do my part. But, ultimately the team came together, and I believe the best team ever to play the game of football.
There you go. Nice. And now a quick follow-up to that. I don't know if you saw all the videos today of the Buccaneers on their boats, and Tom Brady chucked the Super Bowl trophy from one boat to the other. Did your guys' parade get that wild at any point, or was it more mellow than that?
We were a little wild, but we weren't on water, I was a little jealous, they floated boats and things of that nature, where it's 80-something degrees. It was freezing when we did ours. We did it on the mall. It was tons of people out there. But I don't think anybody threw the Lombardi trophy to anyone.
Yeah, that's
Tom Brady. You look at him; he's 170. He knows where he's letting it go to.
There you go.
That's true. And BMitch, when you think about Brady and just what separates him from every other quarterback, like why has he been able to win 7 Super Bowls? If you can pinpoint maybe one characteristic, what would you say it is?
I say the fact that they drafted him in the 6th round. They drafted him in the 6th round, and that was something that kind of pissed him off. And he hasn't stopped being pissed off ever since then.
Yeah, sure.
The thing about Tom Brady, you hear all this talk about, TB12 and all those different type of things and his workout mindset. He's actually everything that you hear about him. He works as hard as anybody. He takes care of his body, and he believes in himself. Think about this. If the NFL wouldn't just automatically start saying that people are too old when they hit 30 years old, a lot more guys would go past it. But quarterbacks get a different a leeway, a little bit more leash than other players. So they get to play beyond 30. Well, Tom Brady is still producing. What team truly – You say the Patriots now are a little dumb because he's in the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. But think about it. If after this year, he's 43, and Tampa Bay will say, well, we're not going to let him play again. No, he plays until he wants to walk away from this game. And I think that's the ultimate thing. You look at him. You look at Michael Jordan. You look at the way Kobe was. Hell, look at Ovi right in this town. Yeah. Those are guys that they hit a certain age. We thought Ovi was starting to fall off about 4 or 5 years ago. What you think about that now?
Not at all.
LeBron, too. I mean, they just age like fine wine.
Some guy, and today it's no longer about 30. Jay-Z a few years back said 40 is the new 20. Hell, I think 50 might be the new 20 because I'm 52 years old. I jump on my bike. I go around with my friends 30 miles, 50 miles, 40 miles, 100 miles, and I know a lot of people that are way younger than me that damn sure can't do it. So it's what you have inside of you and how do you prepare yourself to be able to do that? Because, I talk to this guy on Instagram all the time. Kyle, Miles by Kyle. This dude is running. This is his 41st straight day of running. His goal is to run in a race where it's 24 hours. you run a 5K every hour.
Wow.
I'm done just thinking about that.
I was going to say, I'm sweating just thinking about it.
So, but it's just, it's what do you want to do? And will you prepare yourself to be able to do it? Because the thing I've always told people, when I played football, I knew I could play 4 quarters hard because I pushed myself starting like today. They don't play preseason. And then we see the first 1, 2, 3 games, people start getting hurt a lot. Well, the way we prepare for preseason was the first game you go a whole quarter. The next game you go 2. The following game you go 3. Now you have to go do some running or do something after that because they're not going to let you play 4. But ultimately, I knew that this body was ready to go 4 quarters. And that's the same thing about everybody else. And I think Tom Brady understands. I will get this done because he's put himself through it, and you have to go through it to know what you can do.
I'll tell you what, that TB12 method too might be why he got tipsy real quick today, because he probably hasn't had a drop of alcohol in a couple months.
Hey, I'll tell you, but listen, man, it's allowed when you win the big one.
Of course.
Especially number 7, that's for sure.
There you go.
Talking about the game itself, the Super Bowl, were you more impressed with Todd Bowles and what the Tampa Bay defense did, or were you just more disappointed, surprised with the lack of game plan, it seemed like, from Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy, and not accounting for how banged up their O-line was?
Well, I think I was more impressed by what Todd did, because this game today is made for the offense to be successful, to be totally honest with you. But ultimately, when you see a defensive team get on the field and can dominate an offense, and especially that offense, it says a lot, because you look at that first game they played, I don't think Devin White played. Okay, I don't know if Vita Vea played. So now you're getting –
Vea was definitely out.
Yeah,
he was definitely out. I don't remember about White.
They rushed with 4. Patrick Mahomes will break people's back by running. He ran a little bit early. But now, all of a sudden, you have Devin White starting to watch him, slow blitzing him, doing different things to where what they do well, you're taking it away. They didn't play man-to-man like they did in a quarter in the game they played previously, where Tyreek Hill went for 200 yards.
In the first quarter.
They played more zone. Then I got him in 3rd and long, and then I start switching it up on you. I make it look like I'm in zone, but I'm in man. Make it look like I'm in man, but I'm in zone. So I think Todd he did a terrific job, and I believe they could have gave MVP to somebody from the defense, and I wouldn't have had a problem. I understand Tom
definitely
there, but he was not the best player on the football field that day.
Absolutely. And BMitch, I'm curious. My favorite week of the NFL season is the divisional round. Joe loves championship week. I know the Super Bowl was your favorite game that you played in, but now as a football fan just watching these games, do you still enjoy Super Bowl week the most, or is it one of those other playoff weeks?
I love Super Bowl week the most because normally I'm at the Super Bowl. I'm at that week.
That's true.
Oh, okay.
So I get a chance to be on Radio Row, and it's a big, what's the word I'm looking for here? A reunion. You get a lot of friends, former players, coaches that you've known coming through Radio Row. You get to run into a lot of people, a lot of parties. You get a chance to make a lot of money. But it's just like that one time of the year when you get back with your guys. And I'm finding out that the stories are getting better and better, longer and longer, and more lies are told.
I was just gonna say, if you didn't finish by saying that, I was gonna ask you how many details over the years have changed from those stories.
Oh, instead of running the touchdown for 75, we had 175 yards.
that 40-yard dash you ran is no longer 4.4; it was a 4.14. Now look, the season just ended, but we know the NFL never sleeps. It's already time to look at free agency and the draft, and the Washington football team already went ahead and made a move. They re-signed Taylor Heineke for a 2-year deal. First of all, incredible story for him. Went from taking math classes at Old Dominion to now a 2-year deal in the NFL. I know the fans loved what he did in the playoff game, but realistically, what are the chances that he is the starting quarterback the first week for Washington this year?
Well, I think it was great that he got a contract, and I think he deserved a chance to be back on his team and competing for a job. But that contract doesn't say that he's going to be the starter next year. But I think it's going to be how the chips start falling on other teams. What if we were to get one of the guys that we've been out looking for? I think the other guy would come in as a starter. But as Ron Rivera stated, you have to have every position every level of that position solidified. You don't just get a great starting quarterback and then the rest of your 2 backups are just whatever. Taylor Heineke showed that he can play. I think last year he ran the offense better than anybody that played on this football team. All 4 quarterbacks that took a snap. So he'll be here. But I don't know if I can put a percentage on it. I would just say this. What I saw Taylor Heineke do is what I preach to every kid that a parent asks me to talk to their kids about. I say, you're not going to always get the opportunity that you want. But when you get the opportunity, you better make damn sure that you're ready for it. He was ready for it. While that kid was out, he talked about it, a little bit in his press conference. While he was in class, trying to do all these math classes, and he got 2 more to go so he could get his master's. But while he was doing all that, he was still working out. He had friends that would tell him, you can't quit. Instead of the friends saying, oh man, you working so hard. No, you can't quit. You have that dream. He had people pushing him along the way. So if you're going to be persistent, you're going to believe in yourself, and you're going to be willing to be dedicated and go do the things you're supposed to do. Just like we were talking about Tom Brady a little bit earlier. When you get an opportunity, you're going to help yourself. Just think about this. He was sitting in class just last year.
Great.
He just signed a 2-year, $8.7 something million deal. If I can go buy a stock today that in about 3 or 4 months, that's going to go from whatever I'm doing to give me 8.7 million on it, that's a hell of a investment, isn't it? So he invested in himself, ready to go forward.
Of course. And now you talk about what the other chips that may fall could be. A lot of the we'll start with the draft. A lot of the mock drafts that we've kind of seen start to pop up because, Super Bowl ends and that next day, all the writers are pressing send on their article for the mock draft. A lot of them have Washington taking either Mac Jones from Alabama or a receiver. Mm-hmm. Would you be happy with them taking a quarterback in the first round, or would you rather them address other needs and then circle back to getting a franchise quarterback in 2022? I know Ron Rivera is a guy who likes to build that foundation before he kind of drops that chip in there.
The way I look at the quarterback position, I believe if you see somebody that you believe is the guy, or that's the guy you think is going to be the guy, you take him and you move forward with it. Doesn't make a difference where you pick him at, what it's going to cost you, because it is a art that's not perfect. We see Patrick Mahomes, we see Tom Brady, we see Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, and we think they all come like that. How many others were drafted higher than those guys? Okay.
Well, those guys weren't even all drafted high themselves.
There you go. Yeah. How many of those guys but how many guys got drafted? But Peyton Manning was a top guy up there. But think about a lot of the rest of the guys that got drafted. How many quarterbacks were not in the league? How many of those quarterbacks combined that were drafted in the first round? Tom Brady has played more years than them all put together.
All you got to do is think back the last few years. Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, Cam Newton,
Mariota, Jameis Winston.
Exactly. Yep. All these guys who were number 1 picks, Sam Darnold, they're not solidified starters anymore. It's totally true.
And that's the thing of it. So for me, if you're going to not have a guy who you think is that quarterback, then you must make yourself stronger in every position. I believe, and I said, and people, I guess they turn their nose up. I played quarterback from high school all the way through college. And I believe it's the most dependent position in sports. You can't do a damn thing at quarterback without somebody else. Okay. So yes, Tom Brady looked good because Tom Brady he was in that system a long time. This year he had tons of weapons. He normally had a great defense. He had a great coach. He had a great control over his team. You look at Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has had some talent. People say, oh, you don't have talent. Your running back rushed for 22 touchdowns in 2019, and then your receiver had like 20 receiver touchdowns. You played with some other guys too. Patrick Mahomes, look at his weapons that he has. Look at the people that played with Peyton Manning. So you're going to have someone. Joe Montana had a hell of an offense that he was playing with. But ultimately, that quarterback, if your quarterback is playing from here down, you're going to have problems. But if you find a quarterback who plays from here up, good things can happen. The thing I like about a guy like a Mahomes, he does both of them, and I think that's the ultimate thing. But you must be able to play the game up here, okay? You're not going to just go out there and overwhelm anybody. I don't care how fast you are. You will get hit eventually. And if you're very fast, you're not very big. And if you're not very big, you will get hurt. So ultimately, you got to start thinking here. Most of the quarterbacks that are super successful in this league, they play from the pocket. They don't play outside the pocket. They use it when they need to use it. But those guys know how to maneuver around the pocket. Tom can't run. Okay? How well does he move around in the pocket? That's all you need to learn how to do.
And now you mentioned some of the more proven guys, and your mind goes to the to the quarterbacks who had those rumors heating up. Deshaun Watson, all the rumors. Out of nowhere, Russell Wilson, all the rumors. And now, there's obviously, where there's smoke, there's fire. So maybe there's something to them. How aggressive would you be if you were the GM of the Washington football team in trying to get a guy like that? I know the whole hot topic in TV shows and radio the last few days. Would you go as far as giving up Chase Young to get Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson?
I'm not giving a Chase Young to get anybody. I think the ultimate thing about that is this. You want to have a quarterback on both sides of football. Chase is your quarterback on the other side of the football right now.
Yeah.
Deshaun Watson at this point, if you take Deshaun Watson and you give up what they're asking for per se, 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and 2 starters on defense, do you hurt your football team? Do you hurt your chances of growing something around them? I heard Marty Herney and also Martin Mayhew talking about it. And they said, if the thing about getting a great quarterback, you need to have something around them.
Yeah.
You need to have somebody to protect them and somebody for them to throw the ball to. And I believe if you go get that guy, and right now you don't have you need some help for Terry McLaurin. You need to have a legitimate backup for Antonio Gibson. So if you go get him, who is he going to really be throwing the ball to all day? And then the defense that you saw play last year, will they play the same? The schedule is going to be a little bit more difficult. It won't be as easy as well last year, although we won 7 games. So I believe you don't just dismantle a team just to get a great quarterback. I know a lot of guys believe in that because I think that if you could have an above average quarterback and a great defense with a running game, which people want to forget about in this day and age, you can win football games, point blank.
You talk about a great defense, good running game, good head coach. I wanted your thoughts on what you thought of Stafford to the Rams, if you like that, and then your thoughts on Wentz going either to Chicago or Indy.
See, the whole thing about Stafford going to the Rams, there's a lot of times when we in D.C. only think that we're the only team out there that people want to, that we can trade and we can give people whatever we want to give them. Stafford had a choice of going between the Rams and the Washington football team. The Rams were in the Super Bowl just a couple of years ago. The Rams have been in the playoffs since my man Sean McVay got there. So if you're a quarterback, where do you choose to go? We love the burgundy and gold, so we'll say, oh, man, he should have come. No. Supposedly Washington offered
it was a better offer.
Okay. Was it better because we think it was? Because I think the offer that Matthew Stafford took was better for him. He saw somebody already. Look at the defense that they have there. Look, if Jared Goff played a little better football, they could have probably ended up in the Super Bowl again this year. So I just think that it comes down to when you're trying to go out there, you better make sure you have a trade partner, somebody that wants to work with you, or you offering somebody that they want. I always go back in the day, Scott Jackson used to always do his radio show. And guys would call and say, man, we should trade Peter John Ramos for Shaq. Who the hell gonna give you Shaq for Peter John Ramos? I think that's how we think in this town. We fall in love with people and we think that people will just take them. No, the other team needs to want what you're trying to give them to get something from them.
And then BMitch, give me a team who you think could maybe be this year's Buffalo. They had maybe a good season, but they're on the cusp of really taking that next jump and competing for a Super Bowl.
I hate saying it because people that must sound like a home. I'll say if this team gets better offensively, it could probably be somebody in the playoffs and making some.
Now, before you go ahead and give your explanation for that, just to vouch for this, I'm not a Washington fan. I'm a Jets fan. You see the stuff behind me. I 100% agree with you. I think they have what it takes.
Now, there's a team down there in South Florida that made some noise this year.
Yes, Miami.
A scary team. They could be very, very scary.
Do you like Tua? Are you a fan of his?
I like Tua, but you think about this. Miami has everything it takes to get Deshaun Watson down there. Think about that. Yeah. They have extra draft picks, tons of them. The Jets also have all those picks, but I don't know if that organization is ready to do it because the organization is a little screwed up. But it also has the weather. And it's a nice town.
No state tax.
Hey, look, no state tax. You can go down there and play. He's going to always have good weather in home games, right, man. Woo! So
I can vouch for it.
A team with the right quarterback. Even Tua will make them better because he'll understand the game now. But if they can go over there and get right back to it, 49ers, that team, they've also been in that hoopla of Deshaun Watson. Yep. You don't want to see them get Deshaun Watson.
No, you really don't.
That running game, listen, we may not like Shanahan, but Kyle knows how, and his dad knows how to
hell of a coach. Yeah.
If they get that type of quarterback, whoo, Lord.
And I could vouch for you as far as Deshaun when it comes to the Jets or the Dolphins. I'm from Jersey. I'm 20 minutes away from the Jet Stadium. I work now in Miami. So I could definitely tell you that the weather's a lot better if he goes to the Dolphins than if he comes to the Jets. And that's a big deal.
Oh, yeah. He can eat good steak, and he can have all the Latin food and everything else down there.
It's great.
Now, BMitch, we end all our interviews. We do 2 segments. We got the Swift 7 rapid fire questions for you, and then we got a trivia question for you at the end. So our 7 questions for you. The first one, will Tom Brady win another Super Bowl before he retires?
70% that he could.
Okay.
65, 70%. All right.
Got you.
Right.
Who is currently your favorite player to watch in the NFL?
Tyreek Hill. I mean, the guy can do so many things. Stop, start. He's not the biggest guy. He will run past you anyway. And he can do so much. That's the whole thing about it. He can do everything, not just run the deep route. He can run the intermediate routes. He run the screens. He run the ball at the backfield. He can do it all.
Best player that you ever played against?
Best player I ever played against, I say played against because he's on the defensive side of the ball, and I'm going to go with Lawrence Taylor. Okay. But if I had to look at the offensive side, because they were on the teams against me, Barry Sanders and Jerry Rice, they weren't too shabby themselves.
Pretty good. Favorite stadium that you played in?
Favorite stadium? I would say my favorite stadium was Old Vet Stadium in Philadelphia because the fans talk so much trash. And I had so many good games against them. They just elevated my game. I felt like they were very much like the Spike Lee of football. And if you weren't mentally tough, you couldn't play against them. And then when I went up there to play for them, I had some damn good games because they saw and realized I was exactly like they were.
All right, I got 3 more for you here to finish this out, and then PJ's got the trivia question. Number 5, a favorite sport to watch other than football?
Hockey.
Hockey, all right.
Physical, is fast as hell, and I absolutely love it because, I watch the other sports. Baseball, I go to sleep. Golf, I love because I play it. I love to play it. But basketball, I watch that too. I just see too many people flopping and crying. But hockey, absolutely love.
And I was going to say, it's a good time right now, especially with all the thing going on with the Caps. So you got that going for you there. Number 6, outside of winning a Super Bowl, because that's obviously the pinnacle, what was your favorite moment from your career as a player?
Favorite moment? I would say the first time I ever touched the football. I go out there and I'm moving from quarterback after playing quarterback for 9 years and had turned down a deal to go to Canada and play quarterback. And then ultimately my goal, they tell me I'm going to make the team being a punter, kick returner. And getting an opportunity, and I think having success so early was the reason that I fell in love with and wanted to do it. I returned a touchdown in the opening preseason game of preseason that year. We were playing against the Atlanta Falcons in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I caught it and was gone. And the rest of history.
Nice.
All right, I saved the best question for last. Who would you put your money on in a fight? Pete Haley or JP Finley?
They would kill Pete. I don't know if you saw the little.
Oh, I saw it. That was the inspiration for the question.
Like 60%.
So funny.
Think about Pete. Pete doesn't like contact, and most of any altercation he gets in, he loses it before it starts because he thinks he's going to get knocked out. You can't win fights or anything if you think you're going to get knocked out.
And I was going to say, follow up to that. 2-on-1, JP and Pete against Mitch. I guess if you're saying that Pete is checking out mentally, it's 1-on-1, and in that case, who would you take?
Look, JP and Pete, we went on a golf trip and they tried to jump BMitch.
Oh God! And
JP ended up with a knot or something on his nose, and Pete almost got his trachea pulled out. So Mitch would kill him. Big Mitch would kill him.
Yes. All right, BMitch. So the trivia question, it's Brian Mitchell personalized trivia for you. All right. So back in 1995, you were first team All-Pro as a kick returner and a punt returner. So we wanted to know if you could tell us who your fellow All-Pros were at the 5 positions: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, kicker, and punter.
We picked those positions because they impact you the most.
Yep.
You had those kickers and punters sending you the ball, and you got the other skilled players on offense. So PJ, it's gonna be.
Tell you who.
You got 90 seconds or 3 strikes.
Well, I probably gonna get 3 strikes. Was Jerry Rice on it?
Jerry Rice was a receiver. That is correct.
He was in the Pro Bowl with me. Barry Sanders.
Barry Sanders was a running back. That is correct. Yep.
But this guy was on the other side. The guy from San Diego, he was a kicker from the other side, though. So who else is a quarterback?
The kicker and the punter. Yeah, for the All Pros.
I don't remember the kicker and the punters.
I'll give you a hint because you're going the right way.
Yeah, the punter, you were on the right.
You said the right team.
Chargers, the guy, I forgot his name though. He was the Australian rules kicker.
Darren Bennett. If that's who you're thinking of.
There you go.
There you go. Give it to you. All right, got that one. So yeah, kicker and then quarterback.
Kicker. Anderson.
Yes,
there you go.
Martin Anderson.
All you need is a quarterback.
Damn, I'm old. Quarterback. Was it? Oh man, the quarterback. So if Jerry was there, that was 95. Was Joe gone? Young? Steve Young?
Not Steve Young. Nope.
Strike one. You got 2 shots left, and all you need is quarterback.
Oh man, I am stuck. Hell, they wasn't throwing me the ball. Why should I do it? I don't know. I don't have a clue.
Quarterback was Brett Favre.
Brett Favre. Now, I played college football against Brett Favre. We met 3 times.
Okay.
My team won 2. And my stats destroyed his stats. I was a quarterback.
There you go.
We played my last game against Brett Favre. Every time I see him, I tell him, I say, remember I had 343 yards passing? He said, yeah. I said, plus I had 134 rushing.
That's awesome. That was Louisiana and Southern Miss, right?
There you go. And that dude was a competitor, believe me. When you started in the pros, if you saw any of his time in the pros, college.
We're young, but we're not that young. Come on now.
I'll tell you, he is a competitor, believe me, straight up.
That's awesome that you guys met 3 times in
that's a cool
college.
little nugget that that would have never crossed my mind.
Hey, go put him up. Southern Miss against USL at the Raging Cajuns, and look at those stats.
Was he? Do you think he was the best college player that you got to see in your time in college that you played against?
Played against Barry Sanders.
Okay, yeah, he was
and,
good
and Thurman Thomas on the same team.
There's some better ones.
They beat us by 1. But then when you flip it over, man, I played against Derek Thomas.
Ooh.
Defensive.
Okay. I went to Bama, so yeah, Derek Thomas. They talk about him all the time.
Believe me, I played against him and McCants. I played against him as well. So it was some guys I played against in college, but Brett was a damn good one. But Barry and Thurman, whew.
Of all the NFL players I wish I could have seen play, I think Barry Sanders at the top of the list.
It's up there.
All you gotta do is get a joystick. That was him. He was a human joystick.
It's right. Look, it's right up there for me. It's BMitch and then Barry Sanders. Those are the 2 that I wish I got to see in their prime.
Thank you, BMitch. Well, we appreciate you joining us, man. Congrats again on the radio show. Joe and I have enjoyed listening to it since you and JP have gotten it. And really, it was awesome talking football with you. We appreciate it.
Y'all have a great night, man.
All right, man. You too.
PJ, it was great having BMitch on and offer up that perspective. Look, at the end of the day, starting with what he said about the Chiefs game plan versus the Bucs game plan, all of the credit in the world has to go to Todd Bowles. Like Bieniemy Reed got punched in the mouth and did not have a response for it. And Bowles didn't just punch him in the mouth once. He kept punching them in the mouth. He kept changing things up. Having him as the Jets coach for 4 years, I knew what he could be. I knew what he was as a defensive coordinator before the Jets hired him. And I felt utmost confidence that he would be back to an elite defensive coordinator after the Jets got rid of him because he is so good at that job. And what he was able to do was just phenomenal. It's going to go down in history probably as one of the best ever performances from a defensive coordinator. I don't think I'm exaggerating in saying that. You have an all-time offense in the Chiefs, and he made it look like a local rec football team.
Mahomes has never lost by more than 1 possession, I believe, in his NFL career. He's obviously never had a game where he's never scored a touchdown. Todd Bowles and his defense were able to accomplish both of that. I agree. The Bucs defense was sensational, but I still put a lot of blame on the Chiefs. I think they just looked at that first matchup that they had this season, and they looked at how easy that first quarter was. Tyreek Hill went for over 200 yards. Mahomes was doing anything he wanted. And they just assumed that even without their banged up O-line, that they could have kind of run their same offense and they would have the same kind of success. And we clearly saw that was not the case. Devin White, I can't remember a postseason from a defensive player. We've had quarterbacks who have had remarkable postseasons, but from a defensive player, Devin White was already a star entering the playoffs, but he might just be the best middle linebacker.
Von
in
Miller,
football.
that year that they won Super Bowl 50, that's the last one where I can remember a defender just being that elite throughout every single game of the postseason.
And think about the offenses that they were facing. I mean, he had to go up against the Chiefs. He had to go up against the Packers. He had to go up against the Saints and all their moving parts. The team that had the best offense against the Bucs was Taylor Heineke in Washington, and White didn't play in that game. So a lot of credit to Tampa. It's unbelievable that Tom Brady can make it look this easy.
And I'm very curious. Sorry to cut you off. I'm very curious. One more note on the Chiefs before we get to Brady, and I will let you go with Brady because it's incredible. I'm curious to see next season how they come out of the gates. So we saw the Ravens kind of get figured out in the playoffs last year against the Titans. Then this year, there were games where they just didn't look the way they were last year on offense. Part of it was the O-line. Part of it was, again, teams just playing them better because they're starting to catch up a little bit. I'm curious if this Super Bowl can serve as that blueprint for teams to start slowing down the Chiefs on a more regular basis. I don't know if you can, because I think you have to have the personnel the Bucs have, and not every team has that clearly. Not every team will be able to do what Bowles did, which was just say, hey, White, Levante David, y'all just sit back and you spy Mahomes, you cover if somebody comes across you. You guys run 4-4s anyway, so you're kind of like safeties and can do whatever you want. Hey, Ndamukong Suh and everybody else on that line, Shaq Barrett, JPP, Vita Vea, I'm going to trust you guys to just rush 4. Oh, secondary, just drop back, play 20 yards deep, don't let them get behind you. That's kind of the blueprint, but it's a lot easier said than done because, again, not every team has that loaded of a front 4, those 2 elite middle linebackers that have the speed of players in the secondary. But the blueprint could be there if teams have close enough personnel. But I do think, though, that it'll be another offseason for Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy to kind of go back to the drawing board and start countering that with whether it's more of a running game, whether it's quicker passes underneath and not relying so much on the downfield game like they do. I think they'll have an answer for it, but I do think there's a possibility for that blueprint to be out now and how to slow them down, because you'll never stop them permanently. It took a perfect performance. It took a terrible performance from the Chiefs, perfect performance from the Bucs to stop them the way they did. You'll never stop them like that, but you can start slowing them down maybe with that blueprint, which Vic Fangio started to give out when they played the Broncos, because he has somewhat of that personnel. But again, the reason the Chiefs were able to still overcome the Broncos is because they didn't have the elite caliber personnel that the Bucs have.
Right. Yeah. Von Miller hardly played at all this season. But you mentioned, I mean, to beat the Chiefs, to beat any good offense in the NFL, you have to rush 4, especially in today's NFL where defenses are at a disadvantage, such an offensive league with how the penalties are geared towards helping offenses more than defenses. You have to be able to rush 4. I think the Bucs really only blitzed like 2 or 3 times in the Super Bowl because they didn't need to. They got home with 4 every time. The amount of plays where all 4 pass rushers for Tampa were in the backfield when Mahomes is running around was unbelievable. He ran for 497 yards without throwing the ball, just running, scrambling around, trying to avoid That might be the dumbest stat I've ever heard. I mean, a lot of that is because of how great Mahomes' arm strength is. So he knows that, he can run backwards. If you would have told me that he ran for
497 yards, of course, if you would have told me he ran for 497 yards and was pressured on 29 of his dropbacks, and that my over 4.5 sacks prop would have lost, I would have told you were crazy. There's no way my over 4.5 sacks prop was going to lose with those stats, and it somehow did.
Yeah, I mean, the Bucs defense was fantastic. But going over to Brady, I mean, he has as many NFC championships as Rodgers does, as Breeze does. I mean, it's incredible. It's not so. Football is the ultimate team game. We see it all the time in the NBA, how you can get one guy and it can just totally change your team, whether that be LeBron or Durant or whoever it is. But in football, man, you can have the quarterback, you can have the running back, you can have the receivers. But if your defense stinks, I mean, you can't play both sides of the ball. So the fact that this team had Jameis Winston for 4 or 5 years, could never make the playoffs with, essentially this personnel. They've obviously added some pieces over the years, but for the most part, this offense. And then Tom Brady just steps right in and he leads into the Super Bowl and wins it. It's remarkable. It really is.
I don't think he's done yet. And the next two things we want to toss up here kind of go hand in hand. So we'll start with the quarterback question. You mentioned how important it is and how getting him as opposed to Winston with the same things around him.
Yeah.
The title, Watson, Wentz, and Wilson, the 3 W's that are in conversations now, and Sam Darnold. Those are the 4 quarterbacks that could be on the move. I'm not buying the Wilson talk. I think that's just him trying to use his clout in the media. But Watson, Wentz, Darnold seem to be on the move. Same thing with the Texans. Like, I don't buy the whole, we're standing firm on Watson. If that ship has sailed, which it certainly seems it has, he's getting traded. But question, all 4 of those quarterbacks, where will they take their snaps week 1 of 2021?
I'll tell you what, Joe, the most intriguing one to me is Darnold, because a lot of people think he's going to get moved before the draft. I'm wondering if the Jets draft Zach Wilson, who it seems like they'll take at number 2, if they do indeed draft a quarterback. Do they draft Wilson, put the 2 of them together in training camp? We see all the time that quarterbacks, teams have injuries during training camp, preseason. And do the Jets use that desperation of a team and trade Darnold at that point? Everybody's like they should ship him off now. They should get even more draft picks. I almost think you draft Wilson. You see what you got with Darnold and Wilson. And then you trade Darnold maybe when a team gets desperate, because somebody out there will get desperate. Look at the Cowboys this year with Dak. You're telling me they might not have made a move for Darnold during the middle of the season?
Before we get to the other QBs then, though, just pause there a second. I see what you're saying, but with all the talk now from Schefter, from Mort, from all these guys who are in those circles, from Jeremy Fowler, the price for him, it seems like, is a 1. Whether it's the Saints, Colts, Bears, Washington football team, all these teams that are in the back 15 of the first round are willing to give up a first. I don't think the Jets could possibly get any more than that. So if it were me, and if they've made the decision to, if Watson's off the table hypothetically, and they've made the decision to draft Wilson, I think you got to just move Sam now, because I wouldn't want to hitch my wagon to hoping someone gets hurt. It always happens. Somebody always gets hurt, inevitably. Right. But how much more would you get than a 1 right now? Like, if it comes down to training camp and, knock on wood, God forbid, Tom Brady goes down with an injury, right? And the Bucs are like, well, we still have this core around him. We could still make some noise. A team like that, all right, they're going to give you their 1, and what else? Maybe a 3 or a 4. Are you really going to hold out and hope somebody gets hurt in training camp just to get an extra 3rd or an extra 4th round pick when a 1st round pick is probably already on the table now? If a 1st round pick weren't already on the table now, according to all these sources, again, Shefty, Moore, all these guys have been in on it saying back half of the 1st round, they're ready to give up their pick for Darnold. If that weren't the case, I would say wait. If the talk was, all right, teams are lining up to give a 2 and a 4 or a 3 and a 5, maybe hold out and get a desperate team. But if they're already able to fetch a 1 for him, like the talk is, I don't think you're doing much more than that, except maybe a desperate team giving you a 1 and a 4. I wouldn't take that risk of waiting just to get a 4th round pick.
It's a good point. To me, though, that's the interesting thing, is if Darnold gets moved, when it happens. Is it before the draft?
I think it has to be before the draft. It would have to be. Because the Jets lose leverage as well. They lose leverage if they have Wilson and Darnold. Teams are going to turn around and say, well, yeah, we're desperate, but if you don't give them up, you're stuck with 2 of them. So it doesn't really matter to us, So I think the Jets lose all their leverage too if they have both of them. So it almost mitigates how desperate the other team would be. Sure, they'd be desperate, but the Jets have no leverage because they got
another thing too is, very well, the Jets have had to rely on their backup a lot the past couple of seasons. So it might not be bad in their instance.
Like an RG3 Kirk Cousins type of thing almost.
Well, yeah, we'll see what happens. As for Watson and Wentz is getting moved. I'm thinking it's going to be Chicago. Wentz is gone. I'm thinking it's going to be Chicago. It could be Indy, but I'm thinking Chicago will be his landing spot. And then Watson's the biggie. Obviously, you heard the interview with Brian Mitchell, and he's like, Miami. I mean, you should be on the phone right now. You got a lot around Watson. If you deal him, you got the draft picks to do it. You got the warm weather. You got the no state income tax. Miami and the Jets definitely make the most sense for Watson. But if I'm a team like San Francisco, man, I mean, if you add
PJ, look,
Deshaun Watson to
the
that
list of teams,
team, whew.
the list of teams that should be in on him is almost every team, because there's maybe 4 quarterbacks that you wouldn't give up currently in their situation for him. So the list is everyone. It just comes down to who has what the Texans would want. I'm with you. I don't think Russell Wilson's going anywhere. I mentioned that before.
Yeah, he's staying.
Think about it. Last year in the offseason, he was complaining in the media about not throwing enough on first downs and not throwing enough in general. And what they do this year? They chuck that ball the entire game. So this year he comes out and he says he wants more O-line help, and he's frustrated with that. What do you think the Seahawks are going to do in free agency and the draft? They don't have their first round pick. It belongs to the Jets. But what do you think they're going to do in free agency and the draft? They're going to prioritize offensive line. That's a whole thing for him. I think he's fine there. Watson, I'm sold he's on the move. It's 50% the fact that I'm a Jets fan and I want to see him with the Jets. But the other half of that is just logic. Like, you've seen this time and again with players, whether it was Jamal Adams, throughout the league. Teams will say they're standing firm and not getting rid of him. And what do they ultimately do? They get rid of him. Because if he doesn't want to be there, you're not going to want to risk just losing him for nothing. Someone's going to offer up a king's ransom. You're going to take it. And look, they got a new GM. They got a new coach. They're starting from scratch. And I tossed this out there last year, just talking with some friends and my dad, just going back and forth with my brother, that with a new GM, considering that Bill O'Brien robbed them of all of their draft picks, it would make sense to trade Deshaun Watson. Now, I'm not saying this was before any of the issues with Easterby and the owner. This was just a hypothetical, like, how do you rebuild? Sure, you're giving up the quarterback, but if you're starting from scratch and blowing it up, what better way? It makes a lot of sense for them if he doesn't want to be there anyway. And there's teams like we mentioned, the Jets and Dolphins, that could offer up what they want. John McClain, he's one of the most respected local beat writers throughout the league. He's a Texans beat writer. He said yesterday in a radio spot in Houston, he said that the Texans still remain firm that they don't want to give him up, which is fine. And I think that's just, that's just them obviously trying to get teams to up the offer. He said they're still standing pat with that, but if they move Watson, he said it would be to the Jets. His words, not mine. So I'm going to go ahead and say that Deshaun Watson will be a Jet as far as predicting where these 4 quarterbacks take their week 1 step. I'll say Watson is a Jet. I'll say Carson Wentz is either with the Bears or the Colts. I will say that Darnold will be with whichever team doesn't get Wentz. I think both the Bears and the Colts will make that trade, and whoever doesn't get Wentz gets Darnold, and Wilson stays where he is. Those are the 4 big names. That's where I see him ending up.
If Darnold does get moved, I think Carolina would be a team to
good spot to
watch out for.
Good
I think that
too.
could be a team for him. But it's going to be a fun NFL offseason. As you said with BMitch, NFL never sleeps. The season might have been over, but
absolutely,
there'll be a lot of stuff that happens.
That brings me then to the next question. I said they were tied together. Last year at this time, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were plus 4,000 to win the Super Bowl before all the conjecture about Tom Brady. So right here, presently on February 11th, after the conversation we just had about some big quarterbacks who might be changing teams, plus just general knowledge of who's got cap space, who's picking where in the draft, who's already got a foundation in place, who's the 8th, maybe not a couple teams, but who's a team that you look at maybe in that middle group that has, as great odds like the Bucs did at plus 4,000, who would be worth a little sprinkle right now in the futures bets getting into the offseason.
So I'd go right back to Carolina. They were a team that lost 8 games by 1 score. They obviously
they're plus 5,000.
Okay, yeah, they play in a tough division, as we know. They got the Bucs there. The Saints, you would think, would digress a little bit depending on who they get at quarterback, but they're probably still going to be a playoff team. We'll see what Atlanta does with Matt Ryan. But Carolina, it seemed like against the really good teams in the league, they all played them tough. They were right there. We both love Matt Rule. We talked to Jermaine Carter Jr., and, he said that his team was right there in a lot of games. They virtually didn't have McCaffrey for the whole season. And when you're missing one of the best players in the NFL, that hurts. Carolina will be a team in the NFC. AFC, I'd say look at the 2 AFC West teams. Justin Herbert, we'll see if he was a one-year wonder, but considering what he did without OTAs, without training camp, without preseason, with Anthony Lynn as his head coach, I mean, that guy was pretty damn good. Derwin James was hurt for the whole season, so you bring him back. You put him with Bosa and Melvin Ingram and Kenneth Murray. The Chargers, That's a team that has the talent on paper. We'll see if they can put it all together. Obviously, they got to deal with the Chiefs. And then the Broncos would be the other team. If they can get the quarterback figured out, with Vic Fangio, they're going to have a good defense. They got 2 good running backs with Lindsey and Gordon. The receiving core, a lot of young options. Cortland Sutton was virtually hurt the whole season. If they can stay healthy, find the quarterback. Joe, we've talked about it. There are so many teams that are just a quarterback away.
Yes.
And the Broncos and the Panthers, to me, they have a lot of pieces. And Von Miller obviously was hurt for the whole year. They have a lot of pieces around the quarterback that if you get the right guy, they could be some sleeper teams to watch out.
So as I said, the Panthers plus 5,000, the Chargers plus 3,000, and the Broncos plus 8,000. They are third from the bottom as far as the teams that you mentioned. Those teams all make sense. A team that I'm looking at is the Falcons at plus 6,000. We saw what they were after the firing of Quinn when the defense really ramped it up. There's obviously some holes on their roster. They got to figure out some money things, but they have enough pieces in place, I think, where they could already get back to the top of a very tough division, especially if with Arthur Smith coming in, if it has that kind of effect of when Kyle Shanahan was in charge of that offense, if it reinvigorates Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, let's not forget all these guys that they have in that offense and some solid pieces that they under the radar have on defense. Again, they showed out the last half of the season. They're at plus 6,000. I'm going to have to say the Jets, they're plus 6,500. If they get Watson, that's a game changer entirely. And the one thing that you have to remember about the Jets situation is that Watson wouldn't be the end of it. They have, after the cap settles in at about 180 million, and after the cuts that the Jets are certainly going to make, just looking at up and down their roster with the money that makes sense to move around, they're going to have almost $100 million of cap space before Watson. They're going to have about 75 million in cap space left after Watson. ESPN, Jeremy Fowler released their initial free agency primer. And again, just talking to different people in different organizations, just kind of what the general feel is around some of the top free agents. There's a general sense that Lindsley, who's one of the top centers in the league from the Packers, Thuney, one of the top, if not the top left guard in the league from the Patriots, and Allen Robinson, one of the top receivers in the NFL, all three will be Jets is the general sense.
I heard the same thing with the Mets and all 4 of their free agents, and you got one.
That was more fan casting on my part.
Oh, was it? Okay.
This is actually rooted in reports from people.
Sure.
And makes sense. So this is actually rooted in some reports, but all 3 of them, the team was projected to be the Jets, and Deshaun Watson, obviously you add him into the mix, and that's huge. The defense has some under the radar pieces already in place that are Pro Bowl caliber.
Is CJ Mosley going to play? Is he going to play?
He will. Okay. I'm pretty sure he will. He took he opted out due to COVID this past year. He's better be fresh after taking a year off and only playing 2 games the year before that. Robert Saleh is one of the best coaches in the league when it comes to linebackers. You look at the laundry list of linebackers he's had, incredible. So you got a Pro Bowler at every level of the defense with Quinnen Williams, CJ Mosley, and Marcus May on the back end. So at plus 6,500, if they get Deshaun Watson, that's going to jump all the way up, you imagine, to probably plus 2,500. So kind of like the Bucs last year, get the value while you can. And the other team in there, BMitch mentioned it, and I'll close with them. The Dolphins, plus 3,000. I mean, the Dolphins are another team that's obviously in on Watson. Even if they don't get Watson, they have the pieces around Tua to go ahead and make a run at it anyway. So those are the 3 that I would look at.
Very nice. Yeah, look, the NFL, that's why I love it. It's because you can count out the Jags for this season and the Lions, really. But every other team, especially if a quarter, and probably the Bengals. I mean, Burrow, I hope he doesn't play this year. We'll see if he recovers. So probably those 3. I know you said the Broncos have the 3rd worst odds, but I mean, if they stay healthy and they get a quarterback, they really don't have many holes. I mean, they're a pretty decent team.
They're getting Cortland Sutton back as well.
Yeah.
Cortland Sutton's coming back from his torn ACL.
So, I mean, even all those teams in the NFC East that stunk, I mean, look, that division, as we know, is going to be up for grabs. And then once you get into the playoffs and you get a home game, you never know what happens. Yeah. So, the NFL, it's the offseason, the draft, it's going to be a lot of fun. Joe, a sport we haven't talked about much just because, we've had football to talk about and college basketball and NBA and NHL have been back. the MLB. We're finally starting to get some big moves. I joked about your Mets a little bit ago. George Springer went to the Blue Jays. Trevor Bauer went to the Dodgers. Andrew Benintendi last night went to the Royals. So we've had some shuffling. I'll just ask you point blank. I mean, is anybody going to beat the Dodgers?
I would say, I mean, the safe money on that is no, and
They're
take a moment right
2-1
now,
which is
take a moment right
ridiculous.
now to just realize how good they are and appreciate it. And I don't want to hear any talk about like them, going overboard with their payroll until it's outlawed in baseball. I know we used to hate the Yankees for it. I know people hate the Dodgers for it currently. Until they change the rules, they got the
Take
deep
advantage
pockets.
of
They're
it.
going for it. There's absolutely nothing illegal about it. Okay, so I don't want to hear any of those complaints. Forget it. And also take a moment to appreciate now that we're finally closing the book on football for a little bit. We're footballed out. We're moving on until the big ships start to fall. But
Right.
I don't think there's anybody that could beat the Dodgers. And getting Bauer, I don't think Bauer is what he was last year. He pitched in a 60-game season against the worst division in baseball.
Right.
And if he, as the saying goes, if he pitches to the back of his baseball card, he's a 2. He's maybe a low-end 1, high-end 2. But think about the Dodgers, what they already have in place. You're putting a low-end 1, high-end 2 as like your 4 starter, which is absolutely absurd with what they have. So it's going to be – look, they were unbeatable last year. They're going to be even better this year. You just hope they stay healthy. Don't know exactly what will be their Achilles heel. I mean, you look at that team and like the bullpen maybe, but like Kelly Jansen last year, you see what his ceiling is. You remember what his best days were, and that's really it. The bullpen, that's it. That's the only thing that could collapse.
See, and we've been talking about this off the pod. From a pitching staff perspective, like there are a lot of teams like the Padres can match up with them with Darvish, Snell, Paddock, right? The Mets, if they stay healthy, can match up with them with DeGrom, Syndergaard, and Stroman. The Cardinals, we know they have a good staff. But then when you get into the lineups, all these teams have 2, maybe 3 good hitters. The Dodgers have like 6. And then they just have like so many role players that would be starters on so many teams. And that's where it's the depth of the lineup.
Look, the Mets are close. The Mets aren't far off of that. They don't have as good of a rotation. Cookie Carrasco also in there now too, another under the radar, really solid starter. And then in their lineup, again, they're not the Dodgers, but they're not as far off as you think because you're throwing in McNeil, who's a batting champ, Alonso, who's a slugger, Lindor, Dom Smith, JD Davis are kind of like your quote unquote Justin Turner role. They might go ahead and get Justin Turner now. They added McCann, who is the second prize at catcher behind Real Muto. So like they have pieces, again, not at the Dodgers caliber by any stretch of the imagination, but as far as ranking the lineups after the Dodgers and pitting teams up against the Dodgers, they're not way back where it'd be out of the realm of possibility for the Mets to make a run at the Dodgers in the playoffs. But I mean, the Dodgers are head and shoulders above everybody else, and I'm excited. You get out of football, you got now college basketball entering the home stretch, but spring training is on the horizon, and it's exciting to hopefully have like some semblance of a normal season. Yeah. And in New York, they're starting to lift the restrictions a little bit. They said that the large stadiums or arenas starting February 23rd. Could have 10% capacity. So the Rangers are going to start having 2,000 fans at the games. The Mets and the Yankees will be able to, when the time comes, have about 5,000 or 6,000. So we're getting there. Nice. And the big thing is that I'm looking forward to seeing is a lot of these fans getting to greet their new players. They got a lot of new faces and new places this year. It wasn't really the hot stove. It was more of a crock pot. Like it was a real slow cooking burn the whole time. Like
it's been that way kind of the last couple of years.
I know, like we had the first big domino to fall. The first few when free agency kind of open, and then there was like a big gap, and then there was the Lindor trade, and there was quite a gap, and then there was the Arenado trade, and then sprinkled in there was, oh, by the way, Springer signed here, oh, by the way, Real Muto signed here. Like it was just all really dragged out, and kind of if you weren't checking your phone, you didn't realize till like a couple days later, oh, I didn't realize that happened. I forgot that Blake Snell got traded to the Padres until you mentioned a couple minutes ago. Like there's just so many things that it happened so slowly and deliberately and over so much time and so quietly that like you forget. But I'm excited to see new faces in new places. Springer going to the Blue Jays. Didn't even mention that one. Of all of those, which one do you think has the most immediate, massive impact on that franchise?
A good question. The most immediate impact. I loved Springer to the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays, the AL East now, Joe.
The Blue Jays are the Padres of the AL.
They are, and as we viewed the NL last year, and we were like, it was the Dodgers and kind of everybody else. That's the way the AL is this year. It's kind of the Yankees and everybody else. The Rays have lost a lot. The Astros have lost a lot. So you look at the Blue Jays and you add George Springer in a hitter-friendly ballpark with all that young talent that they have. They could be not only the second best team in the AL East, but maybe the second best team in the AL, possibly. I mean, the AL Central. Look, the Twins. I mean, they'll be good, but they're a good regular season team. They still have not figured out the postseason yet. And in the AL West, we hope that maybe that Rendon is healthy this year with the full season. The Angels have helped a little bit to help out Trout. Maybe they take a jump. But again, the Astros losing Springer is such a key part to that offense. They still have Altuve there and Bregman and Gurriel and all these pieces. But I'm telling you, the Blue Jays are a team I would watch out for. And Springer helps that lineup tremendously.
Definitely solid. Look, I mentioned all the big names that you might have forgotten change teams. They're all going to have some level of impact. Lindor, attitude-wise, is going to change things on the Mets. Bauer makes a ridiculous rotation even deeper. But the big one for me was Arenado. Arenado, he's not Mike Trout. So bear with me a second. He's not Mike Trout, but he's in that Mike Trout category of a guy who is absolutely elite. And you kind of forget that because he was playing on Rockies teams that usually weren't good. They had the one-off where they made it to the wild card, won the wild card, then lost it to I think it was the Brewers that year, if I remember correctly. But he's in that mold. You forget how elite he is. And now you put him on a team like the Cardinals, who are in the thick of things every single year. And you think about that team at the corners right now. Arenado at third, Goldschmidt at first. They're a very dangerous team. Adding Arenado to that lineup, that was last year. Look, they started and then they were out for like 3 weeks because they had the biggest COVID outbreak of anybody on their team. And they still ended up making it into the postseason and being a solid team who's always a tough out again in any given year. That's the one for me that was like, oh, they got something going on, and they gave up absolutely nothing to get him. You thought the Mets gave up nothing to get Lindor? The Cardinals turned around and said, hold my beer, because they gave up even less to get Arenado. It was ridiculous. So that was the one for me where I was like, okay, we got something going on here in St. Louis where they're going to be right back into the thick of things in the possibly winning a pennant in the NL, back to like, from about 2005 to 2015, the Cardinals every year, it seemed like it. You blinked and they were in the NLCS somehow.
Right.
It seems like it could be getting
the Giants. Yeah,
exactly. It was one. Either they were against each other or one of the two were there for like an 8-year stretch. So they're kind of getting back to that point, and they're going to be very dangerous. I was kind of surprised at how quiet certain teams in the NL were, like the Braves, but look, those teams already have really solid infrastructure.
Yeah.
That Cardinals move really, really stood out to me. That's going to be
the Braves got Ozuna, which was big. The Nationals have gotten some like under the radar moves that helps. They got Schwarber. They got Hand. They got another veteran starter, I feel like, that I can't think of John Lester. That's who they got. Yep. So they're bringing in, not names that they once were, but veteran guys to kind of round out that team. But you mentioned Arenado and the Cardinals. The best thing for the Cardinals is that they play in the worst division in baseball. They'll win the NL Central, so they won't have to face the Dodgers in the wild card round or the NLDS probably. So it's good to avoid that team as much as you can and try and
hope they fall before you even got to deal with them.
Right? Maybe the Padres will knock them out.
When they lost to the Nationals in 5 games, you look at the Dodgers, how many times have they faltered in the DS?
Yes.
Because they're such a good team that is so hard to beat in a 7-game series. But in a 5-game series, different story. You look at just this past year's NLCS, they were down 3-1 to the Braves. If it were the NLDS, 3 losses, you're out. But
Right.
because it was the CS, they had that extra game of a buffer. They won 3 straight. They won the World Series. So that's the round that you want to avoid the Dodgers in, because you might not have to see them in the NLCS, because that's the round where they've typically faltered. So Cardinals are in a good position. That move was huge. And look, I'm excited for baseball. It's last year I was so jaded about baseball because I was like, look, it's a 60-game season. It's going to be weird. Yes, I credit the champion as a champion, period. End of sentence. Like, there's no question in my mind, no asterisks, but like, I just wasn't excited about it. And so many teams missed so much time. So it went by win percentage instead of records. Like, it was just so odd. And it had such a dark cloud hanging over it all the way to the end, when the Dodgers had to pull Justin Turner in the last game of the World Series because he tested positive, and then he comes back on the field and celebrates with them anyway. It was ridiculous. Such a dark cloud over the league the whole season. I'm happy for this season to put last year behind us and get on to a new one. And I'm sure Rob Manfred's going to screw it up in some way anyway and take away all my excitement again. But for now, I'm hopeful.
I mean, that's what Bob Manfred does. He's a thief of joy. So we'll see what happens. Real quick NBA talk, Joe. The COVID bug is starting to hit the NHL and the NBA a little bit. NHL, the big talk has been Brooklyn. They've just not been as great yet as we thought they would be since acquiring Harden. They won last night against Indiana. I think Brooklyn's going to be fine. I mean, we talked about this. Like, when you bring 3 guys in like that, it's going to take time. Just have them get to the playoffs, and then in the playoffs, when the game slows down and you have 3 dudes of that level of offense who will really try on defense in playoff series, the results will be much better. The surprise right now has got to be Utah at the top of the Western Conference, 20-5.
Very impressive.
They are killing it. They've won 5 in a row. The Lakers have won 6 in a row. They're 20-6. In the Eastern Conference, the playoff picture is essentially what we thought it would be, except the Heat have really struggled. They're 10-14, and the Charlotte Hornets are currently the 7 seed right now. They're playing really well. Charlotte's a fun team. We obviously work at NBC Sports Washington, do Wizards and Caps games, and I watched the Wizards-Charlotte game, and it was really the first time I saw Charlotte all season. And I'm looking at their mix of veteran players with young talent, and I'm like, this is a solid.
They remind me of those Pacers teams that like gave LeBron's Cavs some trouble every year in the playoffs.
Yeah.
They remind me of that, where like, I don't envision them making any sort of playoff run, but like, they're a team you don't want to face on a given night in the regular season. And when you face them in the first round of the playoffs, they might take you to 6 games out of nowhere. That's kind of where they fall in as far as the tiers in the NBA. Other than that, like you said, most things have gone to form. The biggest storyline, and being in the New York market for now, popping them on every other night. I've gotten a chance to watch a good bit of the Nets ever since they made the Harden trade. And when they get to the playoffs, it's going to be a different story, because they've played down to their opponents and they've played up to their opponents. And in the playoffs, there's no opponents to play down to. They're all playoff teams. They're all solid. The Nets will raise their game. It's just a question of, like, at any point, will they play defense? I don't know that the answer to that question is yes. They're probably going to have to score 150 points a night, but they also can score 150 points a night with the firepower they have. So we'll see. I'm sure they'll mesh more as the season goes along. But, again, right now, kind of hitting the middle doldrums of the NBA season. The NHL season, forget it. Like, we can't even talk about much right now because so many of the teams are on pause. So we just got to kind of hope that starts to figure itself out like the MLB did. I mean, the MLB had those issues early on. They figured it out. So hopefully the NHL does the same. But one more thing on the NBA before we get to a quick look at college basketball. And we're throwing a lot at you today in episode 37 because, again, we've neglected some of these other sports with the run to the Super Bowl. We're just catching up and kind of priming the next 4 weeks where we got the rest of these sports to finally look forward to all at the same time. Last thing with the NBA, almost at the midpoint because the All-Star break's coming up. First of all, it's stupid that they're even thinking about having an All-Star game. That's going to blow up in their face.
Yeah.
And I hope the players take a stand like they're trying to start to already. But that's a totally separate argument. But at the midpoint nearly, just revisiting the early season picks we had for regular season MVP and for Rookie of the Year, the MVP odds have drastically changed. It was a Luka Giannis thing. Now they are 5 and 6 respectively. It's LeBron, Embiid, Jokic, Durant are the top 4. And out of that group, I couldn't tell you which way it's going to go. All four of those guys have an equally good claim to it right now, and it's going to be a really fun race. The margin on the odds is very thin. You got LeBron at 250, you got Embiid and Jokic at 450, and then Durant at 800. So it's a tight margin as well. Out of that group, you're hard pressed to bet against LeBron. Maybe it's a year where the voters finally kind of just give him one to make up for all the years that he probably should have won it but didn't. So that could be the thing here with him this year. Kind of like how for Cy Young, I thought was 2 years ago now when it was Garrett Cole and Justin Verlander going head to head. Cole definitely deserved it with the numbers, but after having already robbed Verlander a couple of times, I think he got kind of a sympathy vote and went ahead and beat Garrett Cole. Yeah. I think you might get that this year with LeBron. So, I mean, the rest of the way, he's obviously the guy to beat. But Embiid and Jokic, two incredible big men, two incredible seasons for them right now.
It's nice to see in this day of an age in NBA with three-pointers and guards and spread you out that some of these bigs are still are killing it in the league. Embiid and Jokic are really, really good. Jokic, to me, could be the one to take if the Nuggets start winning because the Sixers got a lot of weapons. Obviously, the Lakers have a lot of weapons. But the Nuggets, if Jokic isn't playing well, then they are going to start losing games. So if they go on a win streak, it'll likely be because Jokic is having 40-point triple-doubles or something. So he would probably be my guy to watch for MVP as right now.
LaMelo Ball on Rookie of the Year. He started the year as a favorite at plus 450. He's already up to minus 350 now. The next closest is Tyrese Halliburton at plus 600. I went ahead. I already cashed out my limit. I had the cash out option. I already took my money. I didn't want to risk him getting hurt at some point for almost the full profit of what the preseason bet was. I cashed out of that one already, so I'm a winner on that. LaMelo Ball. Look, I hope he stays healthy because he's been fun to watch. With no disrespect to Lonzo, LaMelo is certainly the much better brother. It's night and day. It's totally different.
I wish we got to see him in I guess we wouldn't have seen him in March Madness because he would have been a freshman last year, but I do wish we got to see him at UCLA or whatever school he would have went to. Speaking of college, though, in UCLA, Joe got a great Saturday slate. Again, so this upcoming Sunday, will be a month until Selection Sunday. Oh, that's just fantastic. We obviously had Lunardi on last week to kind of get us in the mode for that. Joe, hands down, 100% the game that I cannot wait for on Saturday, that I'm circling, highlighting, starring, all that good stuff. Loyola Chicago at Drake at noon on ESPN Dose. The two best mid-major teams in the country in the Missouri Valley. Drake got all the headlines because they're undefeated. They went on a COVID pause, and they're 6-1 since, but they haven't looked quite like their same self. And Loyola Chicago is just rolling. They obviously made that Final Four run a couple of years ago. They still have their same coach in Porter Moser, but it'll be a good game. I like Drake in this game on Saturday. A lot of people I just think are going to take Loyola Chicago because they're ranked, because they're rolling. But I love how Drake plays. They full court press, man-to-man. They pick you up. They run in transition. They got a lot of good athletes. And I cannot wait for this game. That is the game I'm most looking forward to.
It's a good one, and it's one that's going to fly under the radar. And we're going to try to make this over the next 4 weeks a weekly thing to kind of replace best bets. We're not going to pick these games necessarily and do best bets for college basketball, but we're going to, in the place of best bets, we're going to go ahead and preview the top most impactful potentially games of the weekend that we want to watch. You mentioned a month from Sunday, Selection Sunday. So we got to get into that mindset, and we're going to do that by looking at the top games of the weekend. For me, the one that I'm circling, it's on Saturday, 5 o'clock on Fox. Number 5, Villanova at Creighton. Creighton, in the conversation with Joe Lunardi last week, he was mentioned as a dark horse to go ahead and win the whole thing with Zagorowski and the talent that they have. They're 19th. Villanova's 5th. Creighton's at home. Great barometer for Creighton as far as figuring out where they stand among the contenders heading into the final month of the season. That Big East tournament, when it comes around, is just going to be people mauling each other left and right. It's a tough conference, and anybody at any point could beat anybody. And I think we're going to see that. I like Creighton in this game. Villanova has had a couple of iffy performances this year. They went ahead and lost to St. John's recently. I think this is when Creighton kind of kicks it into gear like a horse entering the final stretch run at the Kentucky Derby. This is when I think Creighton's going to kick it into gear and start that closing run. And Zagorowski's going to get hot. He's going to stay hot into the tournament, the Big East tournament, and then see how far you could take them in March. This is the game that I've got circled for Creighton. I've had it circled for a while. Like you said, circle it, highlight it, star it, whatever. This is the one that I've had on the radar for Creighton. I'm really excited for it on Saturday.
That'll be a good game. And if Villanova really, I shouldn't say if they have any chance at a number 1 seed, but if they want to get a 1 seed, they got to win this game because we know Gonzaga and Baylor will be the 1 seeds. We know Michigan will probably be a 1 seed. If Villanova loses this game, I think it's going to the other Big Ten team, whether it's Ohio State, Illinois. I think one of those other Big Ten teams get it if Villanova doesn't. This is the kind of win they need after their COVID pause to get back on track and show the committee Villanova is for real.
And
so
don't forget
a great
a couple other things to keep your eye on. You mentioned Loyola and Drake. With the scheduling in the Missouri Valley Conference, this is one of those back-to-back doubleheaders. They're playing Saturday and Sunday. Don't forget that. They're playing Saturday at 12. They're playing Sunday at 3, both on ESPN2. So that's a double for you. And then on Sunday, as of now, scheduled, hopefully nothing changes, the return of Michigan. Long COVID pause for Michigan. 1 o'clock on Sunday, Michigan against Wisconsin, a ranked matchup as well. So that's another one. See how Michigan looks after. It's been about 2.5, 3 weeks off now. So curious to see if they are able to get right back, hit the ground running as the number 3 team in the nation, or if they take a bit of a step back for a little bit.
And then 2 other games I'd probably just say that intrigue me. Oklahoma at West Virginia is a good one. Because of West Virginia, you think West Virginia, you think Bob Huggins, you think defense. West Virginia's been scoring the ball. Mm-hmm. And to me, they're an underrated team in the Big 12. It's crazy because a lot of these Big 12 teams, West Virginia, Texas Tech, Baylor, usually you just think defense, but all these teams can score. That should be a good game. And then the other one is Tennessee at LSU. Huge game for LSU if they want to make the tournament as an at-large. LSU has struggled this year with teams that can defend, and Tennessee is a very good defensive team. I like Tennessee in that game. LSU's offense is fantastic, but when teams can punch them in the mouth, when they can beat them up a little bit, LSU just struggles to fight back. Tennessee, we know Rick Barnes always has good bigs, good low post game, and this is a big game for LSU, but I think Tennessee will win that one. So those would be the other 2 I keep an eye on.
All right, like I said, in place of best bets, we got this look ahead of the top matchups each weekend in college hoops, and just wanted to remind everybody that I did officially win best bets from PJ, and I will be getting Waffle House from PJ while he is wearing jet skier at some point when it is safe to do so. And with that, we get into trivia. And what's the score there now, PJ, as well?
Score trivia. We are tied up at 14.5.
That's right. We're tied again.
Tied again.
I will give you my question first this week.
Okay. Yep.
It's kind of a layup. I think it's a layup.
That means I'll miss it.
I wanted to go with kind of the theme of one of the big things we talked about with BMitch, which was that the draft is not an exact science, and more QBs than you think early on in the draft miss. Mm-hmm. So I wanted you, since the 2016 draft, so the last 5 NFL drafts, I want you to give me, there are 7 of them. Since 2016, 7 first-round quarterbacks have made at least 1 Pro Bowl. Who are the 7?
Since 2016, 1 quarterbacks that have made 1 Pro Bowl. All right, Josh Allen.
Josh Allen made at least 1.
Lamar Jackson.
Yep.
Patrick Mahomes.
Correct.
Let's see. Carson Wentz make it that 1 year.
Just 15 seconds into it. You got plenty of time.
Baker Mayfield didn't make it. Kyler Murray. I don't think he made it. Joe Burrow.
Excuse me, 8 of them. Sorry, I lied. 8.
8. Okay. Oh, Deshaun Watson.
25 seconds into it.
Let's see. Ooh, was Herbert a Pro Bowler this year? I'll go Herbert, Justin Herbert.
Strike 1.
Herbert was not a Pro Bowler. Okay. Let's see. Dak Prescott. Carson Wentz. Did Wentz make it? I'm gonna go Wentz that year.
Wentz made it in 2016. He did.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, he didn't make it in 2016. He was drafted in 2016.
Okay. Golf too. I think Golf got one.
Also made it. He made it the Super Bowl year.
Okay. Kyler Murray. I don't think he did.
You got 2 left.
Okay.
You got 20 seconds left.
Yep.
And 2 strikes to work, but still.
And how many more do I need?
2. You got 10
2.
seconds.
I'll go Kyler Murray.
Correct.
And Baker Mayfield.
Strike 2. 5 seconds.
And Marcus Mariota.
Nope. That was the year before, 2015. I thought you would get it because it's more of a recall of the quarterbacks who were drafted in the first round the last 5 years. But the one you missed was the one that I thought would trip you up. The one you missed was Mitch Trubisky. He made the Pro Bowl 1 year. The reason why I
crossed my mind, but
I thought this question was a layup just because all the other ones are kind of obvious. But that was the one that I thought would trip you up just because he's so bad now and been so bad since. And it did. All right.
Yeah, no, I mean, the year
I stand corrected that I thought it was a layup for you.
The year they made the playoffs, and he crossed my mind. I didn't know if he had made the Pro Bowl, but wow, yeah, got me. Well done. All right, mine for you is college basketball. And so what was crazy is that this week, the top 10 winningest programs in the history of college basketball, none of them are ranked. So if you can give me 7 of the 10, I will give it to you.
7 of the 10 winningest programs in college basketball history.
That is correct. Go
Duke.
ahead. 1.
North Carolina.
2.
Kansas.
3.
As of this week, I don't think UCLA is ranked.
4.
4. Okay, 3 more. Shoot. Let's see. Who are the other blue bloods? Indiana.
5.
5. All right. Now it gets tough. Winningest programs in college basketball. Is Syracuse on that list?
6. Yes.
All right.
Syracuse.
One more.
Yeah, you got plenty of time. You got 50 seconds left.
Yeah. I don't think. I think this is going to be my first strike because I don't think they have the history, even though they've been great in the last 15, 20 years or so. Is Florida on the list?
Florida's not.
Not on the list. Okay.
Nope.
Strike 1.
Yep.
Let's see. In the Big Ten.
30 seconds.
In the Big Ten. Maryland. There's no way Maryland's one of the 10 winningest programs in history. We got a good history. We don't have that great of a history. Who else in the Big Ten is unranked that's like good? I don't think it's anybody else in the Big Ten. I think it was just Indiana. Out west? Could it be out west?
15.
Gosh.
10.
Is Florida State on there?
It is not. No, you got 5 seconds left.
And the last one's more of just a throwaway, thinking they've got a great history.
Go ahead.
And they've stunk recently. Georgetown.
Not Georgetown.
No. All right.
Joe, you're gonna kick yourself. You didn't say Kentucky.
Oh, just like Lunardi. I didn't say Kentucky.
That's why I was laughing in my head. They're
God.
the number 1 team. You rattled off Duke, UNC, Kansas, and then
God.
I'm like, oh, he's gonna get, and then you just stopped. But well done on Indiana, Syracuse.
Wow.
That's why I made it 7 because I didn't know if you get Syracuse.
Who were the other teams?
The other teams were St. John's, Notre Dame, and Temple. Temple's number 5.
Temple didn't cross my mind.
Yes.
Notre Dame crossed my mind. I couldn't remember if they had that kind of history. St. John's crossed my mind when I was thinking Georgetown and like the old Big East, but I went with Georgetown. I mean, I can't believe I just did what Lunardi did last week, where he thought he said Kentucky, but he didn't, because Kentucky for last week's question, Kentucky was twice on the list.
Yes.
And Lunardi didn't get it. And for me, they're the worst of the blue bloods this year. And I mentioned all the blue bloods except for Kentucky. Hey, you know what? Besides our first names being Joe, Lunardi and I have something else in common now.
There you
go. Left Kentucky out of a very obvious trivia question. Hey, you know what? I don't feel so bad now about you not getting what I thought was a layup because I missed something else that was just staring me in the face like you did.
It's going to be funny because every college basketball trivia question from now on for the rest of time, Kentucky will always come across your mind. They will always cross your mind.
You're gonna ask me who have the least wins in the last 10 years. And like I know, obviously Kentucky is one of the most winningest programs. I'm going to say them on principle, even if it sacrifices a strike.
Exactly.
Just on principle.
Yep. So they're number 1, Kansas 2, UNC 3, Duke 4. Those are your top 4. And then Temple was 5. And then of course we had John Chaney pass away this week. So shows you what kind of coach he was to get him there number 5. Boeheim, Syracuse 6, John Wooden and UCLA, all those wins 7. Notre Dame, St. John's, Indiana. What's crazy is that it's actually the top 13 teams are not ranked. So Arizona, Utah, Cincinnati, 11, 12, 13 are also not ranked. Arizona was a team I thought maybe you would throw in there. They're number 11.
They crossed my mind. So I'm glad that they were close if I would have said them. But I can't believe I didn't say Kentucky. That's going to haunt me. We literally were joking about Lunardi doing that last week, and I did the same exact thing. Oh, well.
Well, still tied up at 14.5. So there we go. Well, thanks again to Brian Mitchell for joining us. Great talking to him, especially after the Super Bowl. Loved hearing his story about how him and Brett Favre played quarterback against each other.
That was great.
And he played better than Favre did. That's pretty awesome. So thanks to him. Next week, we'll have Davey Siegel on to recap the Daytona 500. That'll be
NASCAR
fun.
for Dummies, that episode.
I'm looking forward to it. He sent me a Snapchat. He just got some Waffle House from one of the Daytonas. So
he's enjoying his time down there.
He sure is enjoying himself. Australian Open too. Next week will be like in the semifinals, or will you set an alarm to wait? If it's Nadal and Djokovic, will you set your alarm at 5 a.m. to wake up for that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Forget the alarm. If it's a 3 a.m. match, I probably just won't go to sleep and just kind of make up the sleep the next day.
Right. So. That's fair. Very nice. All right. That should be good. Episode 37 for Joe. I'm PJ, and see you next time.